Welcome to TV, Tennessee Valley Church. We're at Dog Adoption Day, sponsored by a wonderful group called A New Leash on Life. What a great event for a dog lover like me. The people of A New Leash on Life have a particular heart for homeless, injured, or abandoned animals. The mission of A New Leash on Life is to reduce and ultimately eliminate the number of homeless pets and the number of pets euthanized in shelters. Their success has been tremendous. The number of pets in our region placed in homes instead of put down has improved significantly in the last few years. Of course, A New Leash on Life is a play on the phrase a new lease on life, a popular phrase that refers to giving someone a break, a second chance, a new opportunity. I can't help but think of our dog. This is our dog, Gracie. Gracie's no more deserving of a loving home than Hayden. This is Hayden or other dogs. Gracie simply won the proverbial lottery. These and other great dogs simply need a new leash on life. Just like a lot of those of us who walk upright on two legs. Lots of folks need a second chance, some encouragement. Lots of folks need some encouragement, which brings us to our story for today. A story with three characters: Barnabas, John Mark, and Paul. First, there's Barnabas. Barnabas is introduced to us by Luke in Acts chapter 4. Luke says Barnabas' real name was Joseph, but the early Christians named him Barnabas, which means son of encouragement. The second time we meet Barnabas, he was encouraging his new friend, Paul. Paul had been a terrible, terrifying tormentor of Christians, but Paul had been converted and now he was a follower of Jesus. Paul now wanted to become a missionary and join hands with the original apostles. No way, said the early Christians. We've heard the stories. We've seen his old Facebook posts. We know who this guy is. Barnabas countered, I know you're skeptical, but Paul has changed. He's the real deal. So because of Barnabas, son of encouragement, Paul became a missionary. The third time we see Barnabas is when the Christians in Jerusalem sent Barnabas to encourage the people up in Antioch in a new church. Barnabas sent for Paul to come help him. But it wasn't long before Paul and Barnabas were sent out by that church in Antioch on what we call the first missionary journey, to tell the story of Jesus far and wide. A young man named John Mark went with them. And that's our second character in the story, John Mark. John Mark, most often just called Mark, had a fascinating youth. Mark's mother opened her home to the Jerusalem Christians, and so Mark's house was one of the houses in which the first church in history met. Then, when Paul and Barnabas prepared for their first missionary journey, John Mark eagerly joined them. At first, it must have been exciting for Mark. They sailed the Mediterranean to the island of Cyprus and beyond, and it all must have been very adventurous. Mark was learning from and assisting Paul and Barnabas. But something happened in a place called Pamphylia, now southern Turkey. Maybe it was culture shock. Maybe John Mark got homesick. Maybe he got a Dear John Mark letter from his girlfriend back home. Whatever happened, we know that Mark went AWOL, boarded a ship, and went home. Paul and Barnabas completed their journey without Mark. Back home, however, Mark matured. He regretted wimping out on Paul and Barnabas the first time around. 2 years later, when Paul and Barnabas were preparing for their second missionary journey, John Mark wanted a second chance. That is John Mark. And then there was Paul, our third character. Mark wanted to try again to go with Paul and Barnabas on their second missionary journey. Barnabas said, Paul, I've been thinking, and I think we ought to take John Mark with us on this second trip. Paul bellowed, you mean John left us high and dry, Mark? You mean John ran home to Mama, Mark? I don't think so. Mark held great promise, but Paul didn't believe in Mark enough to give him a chance. Paul refused to let Mark go with them again. And here's one of those points at which their story intersects with our stories. Some of us have our own personal Pauls. Some of you have longed for and not gotten the approval, the encouragement, the second chance from people whose opinion is very important to you. For some of you, that's a boss. For some of you, it's a peer. For some, it's a spouse or a parent. The truth is, you might have to do what is right and follow your God-given dream with or without the attaways of someone very important to you. You might have to find your strength in your Creator and Father, not in the humans from which you would love so much to hear a word of encouragement. Can you imagine how discouraging it would have been for Mark to have Paul reject him? But John Mark had a great encourager, which brings us back to Barnabas. Remember, John Mark left Paul and Barnabas and went home. Later, when Mark had matured and wanted to go again, when he wanted to give the missionary thing another try, Paul refused to consider it. But Barnabas gave John Mark a second chance. Paul went off with another missionary named Silas, and Barnabas took John Mark with him. Barnabas, son of encouragement, put his arm around John Mark and said, "Young man, I'd be honored if you'd be my missionary partner." God breathed new life into an impulsive young man named Mark. And with Barnabas' encouragement, young John Mark picked himself up, dusted himself off, and proved himself alongside Barnabas. John Mark ended up being one of the great early missionaries. He even wrote the book in the Bible that bears his name, one of the four Gospels, the Gospel of Mark, those four accounts of Jesus' life on earth. Thank God for Barnabas, son of encouragement. This is Teddy. As you can see, he's dressed up for church. To encourage literally means to put courage into. To encourage is to spend enough time in someone's heart to strengthen it. To pour words of comfort and confidence, of faith and fortitude, of motivation, inspiration, and affirmation into someone who's been, shot down, dragged down, put down, cut down, and worn down. To encourage is to pour words of confidence and comfort, of faith and fortitude, of motivation, inspiration, and affirmation into someone who's been beaten up and is ready to give up. Right, Teddy? Now, there's a warning. Encouraging and enabling are two different things. Offering a new leash or new lease on life is one thing. Actually, helping people make bad choices, no matter our intentions, is quite another. But with that simple warning about the difference between enabling and encouraging, there are lots of people who need a hand up, a word of encouragement and attaway. You can do it, and I'm going to be here while you do. Somebody needs you to be their Barnabas. More about that in a few minutes.
We're creation suddenly articulate with 1,000 tongues to lift one cry. From north to south and east to west, we'd hear Christ be magnified. Were the whole earth echoing His eminence, His name would burst from sea and sky. From rivers to the mountain tops, we'd hear Christ be magnified. Oh, creature finds its inmost melody, and every human heart its native cry. Oh, then did one enraptured hymn of praise. We'll sing, Christ be magnified. Oh, be lifted high, Jesus. Oh, Christ be magnified. Let his praise arise. Christ be magnified in me. Oh, Christ be magnified from the altar of my life. Christ be magnified in me. Be magnified. Oh, be lifted high. I won't bow to idols. I'll stand strong and worship you. If it puts me in the fire, then I'll rejoice, 'cause you're there too. I won't be formed by feelings. I'll hold fast to what is true. If the cross brings transformation, then I'll be crucified with you. 'Cause death is just a doorway into resurrection life. And if I join you in your suffering, then I'll join you when you rise. And when you return in glory with all the angels and the saints, my heart will still be singing. My song will be the same. Oh, Christ be magnified. Let his praise arise. Christ be magnified in me. Oh, Christ be magnified from the altar of my life. Christ be magnified in me. Oh, Christ be magnified. Let his praise arise. Christ be magnified in me. Oh, Christ be magnified from the altar of my life. Christ be magnified in me.
Welcome to the Brownsboro Life Saving Center, sponsored by A New Leash on Life. This is a lodge where the dogs who don't have a home yet are cared for and, most importantly, loved. And Erin Flederman joins us today. She's the social media director. Thank you for letting us shoot here today.
Of course, thank you for coming.
How many dogs do you all work with A New Leash on Life?
We regularly have well over 100. It can fluctuate so much depending on the needs from the shelters here in the community. Also puppies. We try to take in a lot of pregnant dogs that get turned into the shelters. We don't want pregnant dogs to give birth in that environment. So, that's always a gamble because you don't know how many puppies you're going to get. And so it'll fluctuate between 100 and 200 usually on how many dogs we have.
And you have adoption events throughout the year.
We do. We have, we actually every weekend we'll have at least 6. We're always at PetSmart, Jones Valley and University Drive. And we're also at Pet Supplies Plus in Madison, where we'll have probably at least 10 to 12 animals. We did have to kind of make them smaller because of COVID. But we will always have cats and dogs, puppies, kittens there where people can come up. They can maybe just want to go get some dog food and go home with a puppy, and we're okay with that. But we always want to make sure we make the best matches for them. So we do very carefully talk to all of the adopters, make sure that it's a great home for not only these animals that are needing a new home, that were failed in their previous lives. We want to make sure that it's a win for them and also for the family. So we actually have what's called adoption counselors. They go through training to make sure they ask the right questions. Specifically, are there any pets in the home? Are they up to vet on all their vetting? All of that, and then also what are you looking for? We want to make sure that a couch potato kind of family isn't going to get a herding breed kind of dog that needs to run 5 miles a day, that kind of stuff, to make sure that we really make wins for both the animals and the people.
And we want to introduce Hayden. You said that she's just newly available.
Yes, and we call it a rescue ride. So multiple times a week, sometimes we will go into shelters all across North Alabama. We actually have personal relationships with these shelters where they'll actually let us know if they are full or need help. We, of course, are really trying to make Alabama a no-kill state. It's a really huge feat because unfortunately the animal population here in our state is very great. So we will make sure that if there are any what's called an E-list, a euthanization list, they will let us know and we will do our best to come in there and try to help. And so Hayden here was rescued just yesterday. She is 8 months old, so has a long life to live ahead of her. And just the short time she's had here, she's done great with humans, she's done great with other animals. So we're hoping to find her a home soon.
And Aaron, you also have thrift stores, which is a favorite for many of the people
Yes.
who love to support a new Leash on Life.
Yes, our thrift stores will hold household goods, furniture, clothing, everything. We depend on our community to clean out their houses, give us what they no longer need, and we have great success in selling those, and all the proceeds that we get from those thrift stores help us vet all of our animals. All of our animals that come to us, they will be spayed, neutered, microchipped, up to date on their vaccinations, rabies, heartworm tested, all of that. If they need certain medical help like heartworm treatment, which can be very, very expensive, any kind of surgeries, all of that we pay for, and we're a nonprofit. So we need all of what we can for fundraising wise to help us save more animals like Hayden.
And if someone wants to foster dogs or cats,
Yes.
or adopt or give to the thrift store, anewleash.org
Yes.
is the place to go.
Yes, and you can also find us on Instagram at A New Leash, and then on Facebook, A New Leash on Life. And we will always try our best to answer any questions someone might have. But all of our available pets are posted on our website.
Okay, thank you, Aaron.
Yes.
Thank you, Hayden.
Sometime later, Paul said to Barnabas, "Let us go back and visit the believers in all the towns where we preach the word of the Lord and see how they are doing." Barnabas wanted to take John, also called Mark, with them. But Paul did not think it wise to take him because he had deserted them in Pamphylia and had not continued with them in the work. They had such a sharp disagreement that they parted company. Barnabas took Mark and sailed for Cyprus, but Paul chose Silas and left, commended by the believers to the grace of the Lord.
Today we're talking about how Barnabas encouraged a deflated young man named John Mark. We're talking about people who need encouragement. And I don't think Jesus has favorites, but I do believe he has priorities. For example, the Bible mentions in 3 different accounts of the Easter story that Jesus appeared specifically to Peter after his resurrection. Normally that would be a minor detail, but Jesus' meeting with Peter is emphasized. Why? Why did Jesus prioritize Peter? Well, on the night before Jesus died, Peter had denied Jesus 3 times. As Jesus was being grilled and slapped around, Peter was busy distancing himself from the Lord. Peter had bragged about how he'd never do that, and then folded like a cheap lawn chair under pressure. Just, by the way, as Jesus had predicted he would. That was Thursday night, so the following Sunday morning, when the story began to circulate that Jesus was alive, Peter's first thought must have been, wow! But his second thought must have been, uh-oh. And Jesus went first to Peter. Let that sink in. Jesus went first to Peter to encourage him. I don't think Jesus has favorites, but I do think he has priorities. And I think it's people who need a new lease on life. We started with a new leash on life and a bunch of dogs. Let's end with a good dog story. It's the story of a dog told by Rick Bragg, first in Southern Living and later in his book, My Southern Journey. It wandered into the Bragg's yard down in Calhoun County, not far from Jacksonville, during the night. More than half dead, practically hairless, skin stretched across bones. She dragged herself into a vacant doghouse to get out of the wind. Rick Bragg's mother and brother found her the next morning. Rick Bragg said they couldn't tell at first that she was a dog. It broke Rick Bragg's mother's heart. Now, there were so many stray dogs out in the country that running dogs off was a common occurrence. But they couldn't run this one off. It couldn't even stand on its own. They didn't call a vet. Any respectable vet would have said, put her down. Bragg's brother looked at her into her eyes and said, "Hey, pretty girl." Pretty Girl became her name. Bragg's brother and mother fed Pretty Girl and bathed her in motor oil. I remember from a kid, that's how we used to cure the mange. And when the dog was showing some signs of hope, they finally called the vet. A month later, Bragg wrote he pulled into the driveway and there stood a beautiful white German Shepherd mix standing guard in front of the family home. She still had ailments and she was still old. But for 3 years, she lived a full and rich life of a deeply loved country dog. Bragg concluded, there are things we cannot explain, things beyond science, like how a man could name a ravaged and dying dog and have her rise somehow to make it true. That dog just needed a new leash on life. Maybe somebody has wandered into your life who needs someone to see beyond the ravages of a tough stretch in the road. Maybe there's someone who's been beat up and is ready to give up, who needs your encouragement. Maybe you know a John Mark who needs you to be their Barnabas.
All the poor and powerless, all the lost and lonely, all the thieves will come confess and know that you are holy, and know that you are holy, and all will sing out hallelujah, and we will cry out hallelujah. All the hearts who are content, all who feel unworthy, all who hurt with nothing left, will know that you are holy, and all will sing out hallelujah, and we will cry out hallelujah, and all will sing out hallelujah, and we will cry out hallelujah. Hallelujah. Shout it, go on and scream it from the mountains, go on and tell it to the masses that He is God. Shout it, go on and scream it from the mountains, go on and tell it to the masses that He is God. Go on, shout it. Go on and scream it from the mountains. Go on and tell it to the masses. He is God, and we will sing out hallelujah, and we will cry out hallelujah. Crying out, and all will sing out hallelujah. We will cry out hallelujah. We will sing out hallelujah. We will cry out hallelujah. Sing out hallelujah. Cry out.
Tennessee Valley Church means church has left the building. So has membership. Here's what I mean. You might be feeling a need or maybe even a call from God to be part of our church family in a more tangible way. If you're not able to join us physically here at 600 Governor's Drive, whether because of distance, mobility, schedule, or some other reason, you still can be a member of First Baptist Huntsville. Let me send you information on what that would mean, what you could expect from your church, and what your church would expect from you. Email me at travis@fbchsv.org. Let me know of your desire for membership, and I'll help you get started. Join hands with us as we attempt to join hands with God Himself in His mission to the world.